10 minutes. All right, perfect. Okay, here you go. Hello, sir. How are you today?
Hey Ben, I'm good. How are you?
Not bad. You want to do camera on or camera off today?
Mine's just I don't know mine's off. There we go.
Okay, just give me 1 second. Was that my AI companion that just attempted to come in?
I think so because I just got something that said okay to record.
Loom note taker, remove. Just give you 1 second. Yeah, I hate this thing because then it's going to try something else and I'm not going to get the direct recording. All right, and I think we're good. All right, perfect. So, format simple, since we both know who helped me kind of design this new format. I have a service that I'm going to be discussing during this
Right.
as well throughout the process. You know what me and Dan are working on, but
Yep.
our audiences will learn. And then we're gonna talk about your story, some of your career. So, all right, here it goes. All right, everyone, welcome to Autism Experience Podcast today. And today's theme is we're going to learn more about how to make our money work for us. And I have another guest from the real estate investors community. This is Ryan Yates. He's an elder millennial. He's basically the top of the generation. He's a parent, has three wonderful kids, has a great wife, and his career is what we call a fractional CFO. So he's going to explain a little bit about that. But first things first, who do you help professionally?
I help everybody. No, I have two kids, two wonderful kids. Not three, because that would be way too rough. Happy I stopped at two. But in general, I'm out to teach financial literacy. I think that's the key. I think that's something that's missing, and something we have to do to prop everyone up. I mean, like you said, you got to make your money work for you.
Right. And the biggest thing I think for our generation that we really needed to learn actually was personal finance. They didn't want to teach us, growing up, which I think honestly, if I really look back at high school years, that was probably something that we needed more for the real world than all those fancy maths the government wanted us to learn.
Well, I can tell you it hasn't changed. I have a 13 and 16-year-old, and it hasn't gotten any better. I mean, a little bit better, maybe 5%, but that's it.
I'll give you a little fun story about this. So, back in 2019, when I finished my bachelor's degree finally, Math 116 was my worst enemy. I took that shit, excuse my language, 16 times, and I only passed on the 17th because the changes that were made in how you taught math were more toward my benefit. Like you've taken module-based online learning before, right?
Yes.
Yeah, and how did we grow up? Like every past generation when you were back in our day?
Oh yeah,
The
not.
chalkboard.
Yep. Everything right there in front of you. Take notes, all that fun stuff.
Yeah, I hated learning math that way because it's like it's not that I couldn't keep up with it. It was trying to remember when you would take a test or a quiz, the formula and how you did it.
Hmm.
I think the only thing that's probably better nowadays is the fact that if I really wanted to look up an answer, I could use AI, but then I would get caught, but then I would be accused of cheating.
You wouldn't if you follow it, because let's just say my son is in a similar boat right now, and if you AI it, it actually gives you the explanation. So if you copy it all down correctly, you can't be told you're wrong. I mean, you wouldn't learn anything, but you'd still get the answer.
Yeah, but I don't think kids these days are probably more concerned about actually learning the steps to the math.
Right. No, and I go back and forth with this a lot, especially with two kids in school that, they're not teaching it the right way. And I mean, like
Yeah,
you
but this
just
is everyone
mentioned,
who's our age now that are teachers teaching.
right, but everyone's
We were
still
also the
going off of,
generation that did a lot of complaining in the professional world and then talked about how we were going to change the world. And then what happened? We ended up enforcing the system.
right.
Not necessarily much better, but that gets into a whole conversation about how me and Dan look skeptically at LinkedIn influencers. And trust me, you know this from working with him.
Yep. Oh no, definitely.
All right, so let me re-ask this question. Okay, in since you are a fractional CFO, who in your life do you want to help, or who in the world do you help? So let's put it that way, since you're a CFO.
I mean, anyone looking to take the next step. It's an odd thing to say, but for a lot of people, it's starting investment funds. Other people, it's just starting businesses. It's getting that leg up to move forward.
Interesting. Okay, so describe to us where did you go to college? What did you major in, and then what was your first job out of not out of high school, out of college?
I went to the University of Massachusetts for 2 years. I went to community college first.
You
I
didn't
think
play
that's
football, I'm guessing, right?
no, I was undersized. That's a whole nother story. But I can live through my son on that one. Um, it. So I think I did the 5 or 6 year program. I don't even know. I did construction for a while, and then my first job was in hedge fund administration. And I got a background in alternative investments. Every accountant wants to be a CPA. I don't. Um, so
Oh,
I
funny
avoided
because
that.
my father took the CPA.
I understand why people do it. I just have no need for it.
I feel like this is the problem with education nowadays. You can agree with me or disagree with me. And I go through this all the time with the influencers. I just did a post today which kind of took a huge shot at the fact that we're still hiring people with advanced certifications and degrees, but yet the system basically says to people like myself and Dan, fuck you, you're not good enough. Please go get a higher degree, and we don't care about your real world experience. Is that incorrect?
No, I agree with you on that. I think, and the funny part is, I'm going to put this back on you as I put it back on myself, where there is a large amount of um, people out there like that. It's finding that smaller subset that helps us, and it's digging for that subset. Like I can use Dan as the experience because I've talked to him so many times tried and failed that and I mean I've put thousands of applications in um, and never get a response because I don't have my CPA. But just clawing, digging along, and getting to where you need to. I realized later on for me, and this was probably around 38, I'm 44 now, that I needed to make a change, and that change was just more confidence and more structure, and not faking it like a lot of those influencers do, but taking that seat.
I mean, I've come across some of the jokes before. Like, you had a t-shirt on LinkedIn that me, him, and you all joked about freak between the
Yeah,
sheets.
right. But that's
Which is
that's
completely fine because honestly, especially for what you do, I actually sadly got the joke because I'm at level 2 in Microsoft Excel, but unlike you and him, the sad part is I took a full bachelor's in business administration and sports management. I don't regret the classes. Unfortunately, because I was stuck in retail for so long, I never got to use the actual skills in the degree. I had to use some basic stuff for my own reference, which is
right.
perfectly fine. But it's like, okay, so here's a question to corporate America. Why the fuck did you push me into a degree with skills that I can't use if you only decided to let me stay in retail all these years because you were too lazy to evaluate me and all my other skills?
Right. And I mean, I think that's a systemic issue that goes way deeper um than the surface, right? I mean, they cast you off if you don't fit a mold. And if you don't fit that mold, they make you feel like you're worthless and it doesn't help anybody, I should say.
Actually, systemic. You want to know? We can call it systemic, but you know what we could call it? Since, especially because, I found acceptance within the real estate community where a lot of people just literally say the same exact shit I do half the
Right.
time. And it's like, yes, I found people who actually fucking understand me for once in my damn life.
No, it's true. It's fine. They say you surround yourself with the 5 people and all that other stuff. That's true. You find your group and you find your your niche and you kind of stay with it.
Yeah, so what I was gonna say was not, again, not so much that I regret the degree itself or the learning part of it, but yeah, I kind of realized something because my mother said this to me. I'm more of a hands-on person. So here's I'm going to use two examples in this situation, and I think you'll understand this. Example number one, there's a big property developer in New York City right now who's basically gotten a really loud voice uh, ever since the mayoral election last year. I
Mhm.
think you probably have seen him post before on LinkedIn, but he's much more active on Instagram. HL Dynasty.
Nope, I have no clue who that is.
Well, anyway, the story goes like this.
Right.
The founder of that company is a much older man, probably close to the end of the baby boomers generation. I think he was 64 or he was a Gen Xer starting at 1965. Don't know where exactly, but anyway, on Instagram, I've basically looked at his content. I've commented on his comment for almost up to a year. So when he posted on LinkedIn this year that he was looking for an administrative assistant, what I did was we were debating a really difficult city topic, and one of his commenters I thought was insulting me, saying something about the current mayor in charge. And it turns out it was just a misunderstanding because when he and I were talking directly in his LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, in his Instagram direct message, he confirmed it. No, that was about something else. So he and I got to chatting, and I showed him that I've been running a podcast for the past couple of years. Here's an episode which I happen to select of Dan. If you would ever like to come on my show, just let me know. He put the heart emoji on it because he could
Mhm.
clearly see, oh, this is what this person can do. So for my potential business, I could probably have him host a podcast or create a podcast for me because this is his niche expertise and this is something he's really good and talented at.
Right.
Now, the question to corporate America in this context is if the direct founder who I'm directly communicating with on LinkedIn doesn't hire me for an administrative position because he found a better fit, but he's willing to circle back with me to do a podcast, what does that say about you clowns sitting in an office reading my resume all day?
It says they don't care. It's basically what they're not going to look. They're not going to. They don't.
No,
They're
I
going to
have something.
see.
I have a better word for this.
Mm,
Laziness.
of course, it's convenience, it's laziness, it's all that. Where they're not stuck in their ways as much as this is the way they've always done it. They don't think outside the box, and the further you go up the chain, I mean, it's called falling forward, failing forward. Where if you mess up at the lower level, instead of being a boss is an issue, they make you a boss and see if you can swim up there and you just keep moving up. So they're not going to look for people who can naturally move up.
You
If you're
mean I'm going to quote Dwight the General from Tulsa King. The only goal of college is you show up somewhere for 4 years, you do the work, you get the grades, then you have a piece of paper. A business owner hires you and basically says, I can say it here because I couldn't say it on LinkedIn, just don't fuck up my business.
Yep, exactly.
So if Sylvester Stallone, who's 79, playing a mobster that was in jail for 25 years, can literally stand there and say to a kid, college is overrated. It's just literally a piece of paper. Why can't we start adopting this mindset here in the United States? Why does everything have to be about what degree you have? Because at that point, that's just basically saying, fuck you to the entrepreneur.
Yeah, I mean that's you put it exactly the way it is. There's no way it's going to change because
I
that would
have
upset
real
him.
world execution, and here's my second example. Okay, I put up at least one or two posts a week which do less than 100 views on LinkedIn. Automatically, I can already without having to look at the analytics, I can basically go and figure out the problem. Problem number
Mhm.
1, what time of day did I put it up on? Problem number 2, was it a weekend? Problem number 3, if it was it maybe I did a stupid meme when I shouldn't have? Did I post on did I post a podcast episode that didn't resonate with people? Okay, let's go to something else the next day. That's problem solving right there.
That's what life is, right? I mean, that's what everything should be, but people remove themselves from that aspect, and it manifests in so many different ways. You have, um, I mean, regardless of how you feel about it, when you have, what is it called, with a bunch of people, like a labor union, that is an equal, not equal, but I mean, there's always levels and things like that. But you have something that's good in general for all. The worst ones get pulled up and the best ones get pulled down. It's going to happen right now. when you get more into the corporate environment, there's a lot of infighting. There's a lot of pettiness where, if you're in a group of 15 people and there's three bosses above you and one above them, for you to go up, you're not just beating the 15 people at your level, you're removing three people above you. So there's always going to be that openness that's never discussed, because if you're a great leader but you do really good work, you're never going to become a leader because they need you to work. You'll be burnt out at
That's
your
that
job
other
well before
problem
anyone
that
comes
you
up.
and I are now discussing here, which is it's the problem of moving up in corporate America. There was a creator on Instagram, Jim Chong, who's from Toronto, Ontario, Canada, who literally basically said that the only way you move up in corporate is if the people above you in mid management or high management like you a lot.
Yes.
Otherwise, basically, you're not moving up in the company.
Yep. 100% true.
He put it a much different way, but he basically said millennials are now finding out that corporate wasn't what they thought it was. I'm like,
No,
no
I did.
crap, Jim. No crap, Jim. I figured it out in my mid to late 30s when they basically told me at Goodwill, no, you're not good enough to move into the corporate office from the store.
I did 6 years at Citigroup and 6 years at Morgan Stanley, and moved up one position or two positions at one and none at the other. Morgan Stanley, I
So,
was
how
not
early
enough.
was that in your career?
That was the first 12 years.
First 12 years? So you did corporate banking.
Fund administration, so not quite banking, but
Oh,
similar.
Oh, okay. You're on the hedge fund side.
Yep.
So tell us a little bit about what those experiences, not the moving up part, because
Right.
that probably sucked, and you probably had the same feeling I do at this point, where all I've basically been stuck at is effectively the entry level point, and in retail. But you must have probably felt the same way I did, where you were like, nothing I do is good enough.
Yeah, and it's funny, I had to touch the stove twice to figure that out, but that is the other part of the story. But the most eye-opening part is in the investment side of the world, right? So my background's in construction. My family owns a construction company. I did it until I was 24. Yeah, because I'm 44 now and it's 20 years. So I
Your body
worked
was
hard.
probably killing you after a certain point at
I
24.
Yeah, it was.
Because I've
And
always said this about construction and direct skills. Everybody fucking hated me for it. But when I was told in my mid 20s, you should have learned a skill by somebody who basically couldn't even do a credit analyst job in banking and basically, as you stated, well, failed upwards. I'm like, as we get older, our bodies start telling us there's certain things you can't do anymore. That applies to
right.
construction. I remember in 2018 going for an interview at a cable line contractor where the guy had worked in the field for up to 10 years, got injured, and they were like, we need to move you into the back office. You can't do it anymore.
No, it's and coming from that blue collar background and going into investments was an eye opener. Um, like I said before, everyone wants you to take the tax route, join a CPA firm, become a partner, and kind of move in that direction. But I had a friend of my uncle's who's a CPA, and he goes, do you want to take the CPA firm? I'll hire you, and in 40 years, you'll get partner because I'm young, or you can go private and figure stuff out. And I was
You
lucky to
took the
get the
private route.
yeah, and the funny part is, like, I got a call, I got an interview, had no idea about any of it, and the questions were, "Do you have a car when you show up?" And I said yes to both, and I got the job. So it had nothing to do entry level on any skills other than showing up and putting the work in, and it's always come back to that. Um, and like you said, that every time you move up or you move uh, laterally or whatever you want to say, it does steal a little part of your soul. And I worked for the company was originally Bice's, got sold and went to Citigroup. Um, and I moved up and moved around, did a little bit in operations and a few other groups. And then um, I went to Morgan Stanley and I did the same thing. Like, I got really good at what I did. Then I started joining projects and never felt good at the end of that either. Um, After that, I bounced around a few places. I worked for one guy who stole $12 million from his investors. It's a whole nother story. Then went to State Street, and which is another fund administrator, and MG Stover, which is another one. And I thought that would be the place that I would be happy. And they were a smaller group, a nimble group that was just starting out. And you know,
State Street before they got all big and political.
no, no, they were big and political. MG Stover was the group that I joined after. That was small and nimble, but they let me go right before COVID because you're in the New York office. And at that point, I was like, I'm finally done with that. So,
Is that when
just
you
a
pivoted into real estate?
yeah, for the most part. I still wasn't where I am now. But after 6 months or so, which I was lucky because the kids were home and someone had to watch my wife's a nurse, so she was busy during that time. I joined Veloce Capital as the CFO. Still there now. But starting the consulting company and expanding to a few other offerings has been, kind of eye-opening. And that's explaining and kind of giving back and making sure that people understand, what it is and what we do. Because I mean, you see it on LinkedIn all the time, all the people that, spat out that they made 100,000% on this one investment. And, most of the time it's bull.
I like some of the, I like some of our peers with some of these stories, but I have to read between the lines with some of this stuff. I'm like, you're talking more about the direct money, and you've probably been working for 20, 30 years or something like that to be able to even start a capital firm with these. I'm like behind, but I'm interested in definitely learning. But
Right.
the one thing I like about the community, especially even with Dan, is I'm learning more and I'm learning more and more, and I do want to enter into, potentially some level of multifamily, whether be it investing or getting my own properties. I'm
Right.
not stuck. I have to, Dan and I are going to be generating the income. So I have some services that I'm going to be launching. One of them is of an eventual autism is an autism trainer service. So basically what that is most people who are going to tune into my podcast via YouTube know my stories are when we were growing up, I was diagnosed on the autism spectrum with ADHD. And basically,
Mhm.
learning hasn't always been easy for me, but separate from the point of living life. After 18, you don't get as much help with this as you did as a kid. And if
Right.
you're not sure of what you wanted to do career-wise, like when we were growing up, you were kind of screwed because today's autistic kids get much better support than I had growing up. Not that that's a bad thing, but honestly, the companies and organizations that are supposed to theoretically support us don't do a good job. So back in 2024, I put together a presentation for a very close friend of mine who's a co-founder of a mental health clinic in the Bronx. That helps various different groups like LGBTQ, Latin men and women, families of immigrants, discuss mental health. So anyway, I put together a presentation for them about her clinic, including her and her co-founder, as well as their hired therapists and interns, about different levels of autism. They actually kept the training and they use the training with all their new hired people to this day just to explain autism because she's done autism consulting herself. So much like her, she's been mentoring me and kind of, guiding me on how I can do this. But one thing she did say is why I wanted to do this was nobody ever had trainings given to them by somebody who lived with autism. It's done by
Right.
a bunch of educated idiots with degrees who studied it, but I doubt they actually had a child or a relative with it.
Right.
And
And a lot of it, and not,
let me just finish. My
yeah.
co-founder and CTO showed me a paper because he's doing a computer science degree. I I went off on him, but I said, I like the article, but this is not done by somebody with autism. I want to read from somebody who is autistic, not some asshole in a college, who thinks he knows what he's talking about.
And I will never say that I know anything about it really. I mean, when I talk to um, my daughter has dyslexia, my son has ADHD. So like as we have those conversations, we and I mean, you can comment on this more than anything, is if each, there's no such thing um as the same thing. Like everyone's different. Everyone has something that's slightly different. So you can teach one person, but again, like learning from someone who has it or learning from someone who's been through the motions is way more than just sitting behind the desk because you got a degree and said, this is how you do it. And like right now, I mean, my daughter's thriving in high school. My son is floundering in middle school. And, we have uh, like so many communication issues on one side where the other side of it is going smoothly. So, you can't pinpoint it to one thing. But again, I mean, like you said, you need someone who's been through it to be able to, because even where I sit and I try to give suggestions, they're just suggestions. I'm not an expert.
No, you're not an expert and you're not expected to be an expert. That's why people like me decided, there's a market. Not only is there a market for this for me, I'm not looking at it from trying to make money, trying to make money off of it. I'm looking at it as chance to educate people, maybe, for parents and people in the mental health field, give them a better understanding from my point of view about it. If money comes because of it and allows me,
Right.
freedom of choices, great. But the real goal
Yep.
here is to make the world for people younger than me a little bit better place because I didn't get that world. In fact,
Right.
I think you probably remember this growing up, and I don't like talking about it, but I even said it last night at my co-founder friend's event in the city last night at Columbia University. I remember being called the R word in the 1990s.
Right.
And no one will probably want to hear this. I'm not going to say it was trauma, that I had trauma because of it, but honestly, if I could go back and punch half those people in the face, I would. And I don't condemn, condone, or think anyone should use violence, but being told you were mentally retarded in the 1990s did not sit well with me.
Right. You know what? I agree. I mean,
There was no need
it's
for it. That not only is that stigma, that's also basically saying, oh, here's what you could have done in the 90s. Not this isn't directed at
right.
you. Instead of
Right.
calling
Right.
me
I know what you
mentally
mean.
retarded, you could have just asked me, why am I not learning or regurgitating information the same way as you? And I probably would have told you it's how this is being presented.
Right. No, I agree. It's you. I mean, it's definitely gotten better, right? The short-sightedness of people has, to some, I'm not saying, it
It's
definitely fixed
gotten
it,
better, but one
but
place I'm going to disagree with you is we're talking about it, but what are we doing for people like me in terms of creating better opportunities for people like me at this stage of my life?
correct. Correct.
That's the conversation we need to have.
And you see it, and it's not to sweep it under the rug, and I'm not saying it's you or anything like that, but
No,
like, I have um
we
I
want to
have a
make the world
niece.
better for the kids, but we don't think about to set a good example for your children. Most people, not you directly, could be saying, "Hey, Benjamin, I'll give you the opportunity to come speak at my organization, or I'll
Right.
connect you with someone so you can start spreading the word about this." That's what our generation needs to be doing. Not just
But
saying, "Oh, things have gotten better." It's like, I have a message to put out there. I'm doing
right.
this on a podcast. Okay, cool. Can we take this to the next level so I can actually start living independently? Because the other service that Dan and I are working on is partner accountability. So,
Yep.
you know how partner accountability works, obviously, from being in the C suite, I'm assuming, correct? And Dan's explained it to you that this is what
Yep.
he's doing it for me. But for anyone who's tuning in, our partner accountability service is basically some we that guy from the internet who Ryan also has collaborated with, that wonderful Canadian investor guy who hosts the Chess with Investors podcast, and I have teamed up to do partner accountability. It's a white glove service. What we offer is this: we believe that some people don't actually need career life or business coaching. You need someone to meet with you for a month on a 4-week cycle and say, What were your goals last week? What are your goals going into this week? How can we improve you, or can we filter your brain so that, you're not running 100 miles a minute and you're focused in what you're doing?
Right.
That's called partner accountability. I already unofficially do it for two to three different people. And when Dan came to me with the idea, and said, "This is what I think we could do. There's a market for this." Sat there after finishing a data science and machine learning. Not only did I ran the idea through ChatGPT. ChatGPT even, said to me, because I was thinking there's potential with this. ChatGPT basically confirmed there's a market for this, but not only a market, there's a lot of use for that kind of a service. Because I'll use career coaching as an example. You've seen it on LinkedIn also. How many
Oh,
times have you seen somebody say to a job seeker, your resume's the problem?
all the time.
I still see it too, and I'm like knocking my head against the wall, wanting to go WWE on the person or go Stone Cold Steve Austin and basically say, no, it's not the resume. They're not getting ahead because either they don't know who to talk to. You're telling them they need to go to the recruiter when the recruiter is the last person you should be going to.
Right.
Good example. I went to Save the Chat last year with Linda Holtz and Dan since February. I went to that weekly meetup with no expectations. I ran into one of our fellow investors and friends who I never met before, all the way out in Denver. He works for the really large company Zillow.
Hmm.
After being in a breakout room with him, I didn't say any when I found out he worked at Zillow, took the conversation offline and said, "Oh, so you work at Zillow. Any chance you might be able to help me potentially, send my resume to someone or at least get it seen?" He was like, "Sure, here's my email, and if you see a position, apply for it, come over to me." That's called a referral.
Hmm.
And in the most random place, you find people like that. That's what these people should be doing.
Right.
Linda will
Nope.
say it. I'm sure you'll say it. Dan will say it. Job seekers, you should be coming to meetups. You should not be scouring LinkedIn all day trying to bother a recruiter or a hiring manager. That's basically a lost strategy.
It's basically a spray and pray approach no matter
Thank
what.
you, thank you, thank you, because I did that too. I did that with one of my past podcast guests, who lives in New York. I did spray and pray one day just to actually test it out, and it actually turns out this is exactly why you don't do it.
Right. And it's and there's I mean from there's two different major hurdles, right? One is AI. If it's written and it goes through that, it's going to be, and the other one is, there are quotas on who they can look at. And I mean, I was told straight up when State Street hired me, I applied at the right time because they got enough tick boxes in all the other categories that I was allowed to be hired. So, there's so many hurdles already against you that the only job I got through a recruiter was the guy who stole $12 million from his investors. Everyone else, I applied directly to a website or got through a friend.
See, I didn't have that luck where I got roles through friends. I had to go through the computer every single time and the recruiter, which is the last place I wanted to go. That tactic that you're talking about, where you got it through friends, that's indigenous to high school communities that we would have grown up in. Had I stayed in my original community, there's a chance that would have worked. Unfortunately, because my mother decided to move away back to Long Island in 2009, I had to move down to Dobbs Ferry. So unfortunately, when you leave your old community, what do you think happens? It's called starting from scratch.
No, I did the same thing my sophomore year of high school. And the sophomore year I moved. Then again, if I would have stayed down there, life would be completely different.
Oh, absolutely.
But I when I hit a certain age, I kind of went to the point of forget it and just go for it. And that's the part that got me there because, there's so many times where I look back and I'm like, well, this happened or that happened. And that's the point where I was like, okay, now's the time to move forward. And that's like once I started moving forward from that is when it kind of took hold. And that's how I got to where I am now. And that's
Right,
been,
because
about
I
five
think
years
what you
later.
and I both realized is we can't rely on people, so we just have to go out and try to do it on our own.
Well,
And
no, I
actually it's
just
very funny in a way. Dan, and I give Dan credit for this, I wouldn't still be doing this if it wasn't for him.
mhm.
Dan has been
No. And I was just going to say for the whole thing, not the do it on your own part was where I was for so long. And then I realized you need support. You need that. And I mean, granted, like, but you have to find it. Like, it's not just going to show up on your desk and someone's going to be like, oh, here's support. And that's the part that I didn't put forward until much later.
And I also, once I also found Dan much later on, I knew there was a reason for it because I, w- it explains why I waited till 35 to even do something with a podcast. I've been saying I wanted to do it for years, and then I finally found the guy who basically said, why did you wait so long? Let's
Right. And
correct something.
right.
So that's basically the premise of the accountability partnership that he and I are putting forward. It's a 4 week cycle. You pay 199 a month, almost $200. A lot of people will hopefully sign up for this. We he and I are just we're doing webinars, so we're showing people what you can do with AI and then we're pitching it. But now we both realize soon we're going to have to start going from webinar with AI to talking about the service.
Yeah. And that's, I mean, listen, the service, if used correctly, is priceless. That's one thing I'll definitely say.
But
Being,
that's the whole thing with me and him. I think me and him are the right ones to pull this off because not only do we both run podcasts, but I think we understand it.
yep. And having someone in your corner that will allow you to not vent, but to keep to task. And that's the key, right? The accountability part. Like you can come up with a million excuses, but you're going to be there to make sure that they stay in line and complete their task.
Exactly. All right. So, what got you interested in investing in real estate?
I'm not a big fan of it. No. This is my background. When I started in construction. My family fixed and flipped a couple houses. It was miserable. It's definitely not for everyone, and I do try to talk people out of it at times because it should be a full-time job more than anything else. And if you're going to focus on that, that's what you do. But the when I slowly started to work more in the field, you gain a new appreciation for people who work in there, and what they put together as an offering for you as a passive investor.
So, you started out passive investing.
No, we started out physically doing it when in my
Oh yeah,
teens,
you said fix and
and then
flips, which
yeah.
is
So
probably some level of wholesaling, right?
no, it wasn't. We kept a couple, rented them short term. Couple we kept longer term, but none of them really fit what we were looking to do. My family was really good at construction, but we didn't want to do property management. So like, each everyone gets sold that bill of goods, especially on LinkedIn, where it's like, um, buy this house for $50, with the book that says buy it for nothing. Um, you can be your own boss and all this other stuff or doing your part
It
time. But
doesn't work like that.
right.
Even after 3 months of working with Dan, and spending a whole year and Save the Chat and learning about markets, about all the different markets, real estate and construction, like that's not how it works.
I mean, if you look at some of the bigger places that go all the way across the country, and it's like, can they really be experts if they have a property in California, Florida, Texas? I mean, if you look at the construction rules, um, the occupancy rules, the state of the states, right?
Yeah,
There's
you're
so
talking
many
about
different,
landlord-friendly states.
right?
California is a
And
tenant-friendly state. Texas, Oklahoma, Indiana are landlord-friendly states.
So
Would I potentially see myself investing in one of those markets in a deal? Sure, but I would have to do my research. I would have to make sure that all my research, is done correctly first before that, because I know that's the first thing that some of our friends, Dan included, will say to me. You can definitely choose to invest or buy property, but you must do your research first.
and that's exactly where, when I joined Veloce Capital, and
Which
we
capital?
focus Veloce Capital. So we're based out of Hackensack, New Jersey, and all of our building is basically in Patterson. If you know Patterson, New Jersey, if you don't, I mean, you don't want to live there
My
yet,
father
but
grew up in Patterson, but back in the day, he called it a shithole.
it's worse now, but it's getting better.
So they're
We've
trying to rebuild it.
Yeah, we're in the worst wards, the fourth and fifth wards. But partnering with the city and the zoning commission and everything, they're starting to turn around and build some nice apartments. And we went from early fix and flips over 15 years to building. I mean, I don't know how well you know about it, if your father told you about the Patterson Armory. It's the big historical building. Ended up catching fire a couple of times. We just redeveloped that, and they're going to be leasing up by the summer. Where I want to say it was 135 units, I think.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
it's
No, I
right
don't
down the
think he
street.
told me about that.
And there's so many places like that are getting the appreciation, and with tax abatements and all the other positives of building in somewhat of an inner city, and just being focused there. We work with the same builder. We have $100 million in our debt fund. We have, plenty of syndications, all this other stuff, but we focus so well in this area that, yes, eventually Patterson's not going to be the place to be for the next 5 to 7 years. That's where the passiveness comes in, where, once you have this established group that has been building for years, running the property management for years, it creates a track record that when I started 4 years ago, we didn't have. All we had was sheets basically saying, oh, yeah, we've always paid our money on debt, or we've always worked these deals in and out. It's so hard, especially from a compliance standard, to be able to pitch that out there. I know we talked about, and this is going back pretty far. We've created a Reg A that for all investors that's based on promissory notes, and my goal is this next fund that we're doing is going to be, it's a $500 entry, so you're going to be able to invest alongside Veloce Capital, $500 a share to get in, and you earn, in the 1 to 2% net a month, depending on the
That
structure.
actually
And
sounds interesting. So what you're describing is basically I could save up $500 conceivably as my income is growing and then get in contact with you, and then we set up a transaction where that 500 cash goes into your fund. But would I have to be an accredited investor or a non-accredited investor?
anyone can. So the Regulation
So
A
you're opening it up to
investments,
the public, is what you're saying.
yes.
Whereas I know some syndications, and I was told this in the community early on, some of them are really big on someone being an accredited investor.
Yeah. So, I mean, the two biggest exemptions for Reg B funds is the 506C and the 506B. The 506C, you can
Yeah,
outwardly
those are the
market, but
deals
that's
Dan taught me about the difference
right.
very early on. Linda has found me at least one deal like that that looked very interesting. It was a fractional deal, but what I was told was you have to be very careful with fractional deals.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be very careful with any deal, right? Like, I could
Or
come
I
to
was
you
told
tomorrow.
fractional deals don't net a lot of money on holding. If you go into like those minimum 50,000 deals, you'll make better returns. But I'm thinking to
It,
myself, I don't have access to 50K unless I go and borrow off my life insurance policy. And I don't need to get a life insurance policy to go into a deal
right.
where I would rather take out maybe a low amount of money that I could probably put back into my life insurance policy.
Well, I think that's where the is the juice worth the squeeze moment comes in, right? So, you're making the same amount of percentage regardless. If you put $50,000 or $5 in, if you're going to make 20%, you're going to get either $10,000 or a dollar. But what will you really do with a dollar over a year, right? And I
Yeah.
think that's kind of the perspective where this new fund that we're thinking is, if you make an extra $1,000 a month, right? And I'm just saying, say you make your $3,000, that's enough for what you have. You make an extra 500 to $1,000 and you need to put it somewhere, you could put it with us and get it compounding on a monthly basis. And that's kind of what we're looking at in terms of that, because there's a
See,
lot of
that's something
people.
I'm going to check back with you on because, as me and Dan grow this and I have, someplace, I'll make sure to research, obviously, but that sounds like something not only with compound, but you could eventually get me toward, you know, whatever I put in, eventually toward the goal of purchasing my own multifamilies.
Right. And I mean, that comes down to your risk reward tolerance. If, the accountability
The
partners takes off and you have, a
Oh yeah,
billion
because the
dollars,
other thing I would add to this when you're talking about what was that thing you said before accountability?
which one, the fund itself or?
No, something before the fund. Was it due diligence?
Well, yeah, I mean, underwriting and due diligence on
Risk
all the projects.
tolerance. Our
Oh yeah.
friend all the way out in Los Angeles always states when she posts about educating people, always assess your tolerance for everything. She'll say it every single time in her content, and that's probably the best message you can give anyone.
I mean, you joined us for one of the webinars, and I think I said something very similar when we went through
I
the
did.
first underwriting. So it's similar, right? It's the same thing as if it's a storm and you want to go um to the supermarket. Do you really want to get caught in that storm? Can you take getting wet for a little while? Like those are it's I mean, different levels, but all the same, the same kind of thought patterns. Is it
All
worth
right,
it? So
so we're winding down on time, but I think we're gonna leeway to tell us what not cardinal, but your what services do you offer under fractional CFO business, and how did you decide to get that started?
I mean, I think it was the alternative investment side that kind of pulled me in, and that's where I think I excel, is the next level where a lot of places have been in business for a while. They're looking to raise funds or looking to raise capital or sell or go to that next level. I mean, I do like the more holistic approach. Having a good grasp of everything. I mean, obviously, um, starting funds is where I started. But, as you grow and you learn that, a fund is a business, a fund needs to be started with an entrepreneur. It's all basically the same. And as much as you guys are aiming to do with accountability partners, is basically the same thing that I'm doing. I just have a little more finance background and a little more experience in that. And that's the only difference.
Oh yeah, you majored in finance, right?
Hmm.
So then, yeah, that's completely understandable. And you got into doing all this fractional CFO and services more mainly because you wanted extra income, right?
It morphed from that, right? And I think that's kind of the way we all look at this, and why I've connected with Dan and yourself and everyone else. It did start as that, but I see it becoming something bigger.
Well,
And
just like my podcast is already turning into a service I want to launch, a co-launch service with somebody else where not only can he employ me, potentially as this grows, which I would have no problem with because I'd rather fucking, work remote than have to go to site anymore.
right,
Just as he puts it, I basically, do the set number of calls for the day, do the follow-ups, log off, and
right.
then do whatever the fuck I want. Who
Yeah.
wouldn't
I mean,
want that
that's,
right now?
you pick what you want, and as long as you go for that goal, it's fine. I mean, originally, like you said, I think it was extra income. It was, give me 4 or 5 solid opportunities. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, well, there's a limit to that. And then I basically become for lack of a better term, a slave for those 5 people. Why not make it into something bigger? And so like, the drive is there, the drive is to move on, but the goal was to move up more than it is to.
I'm 40, so like you, I just entered the 40s, and I just looked back at the last 20 years of my life. for anyone who would learn this, I'm not looking at, as some of my past guests have said, you should grow a career. I'm like, what career? I'm 40 years old and I've been stuck in retail. What I
Right.
should be thinking is in a mindset shift. It's mom and dad's time are 70 and 71. They've been divorced since I was 5 years old. I love both of them, but in
Mhm.
reality, they have about 30 years left. Do I want to still be tied to this area or, working something that I don't like? Or do I want to work with people who will get me a few sources of income and then I could go park my ass overseas with whoever potentially I might be able to get married to and just, live life
Right.
on my terms. That's what linking up with people like Dan is about.
Right. Yeah. And that's, I mean, if
Empowering
that's
people along the way, registering a business. I've learned it's funny because I'm going to circle back to my observations about these degrees. I've learned more in the real estate community for almost 2 years now. In 3 months with Dan, I've learned more, but you want me to go leverage 20K for a master's in business, which is going to do what for me?
exactly, I agree. I
Analogy.
think,
It's a big fancy piece of toilet paper.
yeah. And I think if anything, the one thing that they don't tell you that they should is it's more about creating that community and that you're not, and again, I
You
do
go to
agree. They
graduate
say,
school. You go
but
to
the goal is
graduate
to make those
school.
connections.
Graduate school is basically you're paying for networking and a community
Yes,
and the name brand. What we're
exactly.
doing is we have several people, whether they're syndicators, whether they're people like yourself, whether they're podcasters, who are basically saying, nah, let's skip all the paid gatekeeping and let's just form a community and help one another
Exactly.
find opportunities.
Yep. 100%.
I mean, that's really the way you should look at it because there's two different types of communities. There's these career coaches who are like, come join my community. Cost, you have to pay for it.
Yep.
You have to pay
Exactly.
for my guidance. Whereas I can sit here with you and Dan and basically get guidance. With Dan, I'm building a service and I get access to actual mentorship without actually having to shell out $4,500. Because we were just
Right.
joking about that today on his recording. I'm like, honestly, if I'm a job seeker, I'm gonna come to myself, pay $299 a month for an accountability partner. If you ask me to pay 1,100 for a coaching system that worked 11 years ago, that's really meant for recruiters, I can only apply about maybe 50% of that.
Right.
50% of that does work. The other 50% of it is unfortunately this worked 5 to 10 years ago before
Right.
all the digital gatekeeping took effect.
No, exactly.
So if I'm hitting a wall, it's like that's where I need a human being,
Yeah.
not another system. And
Right.
Dan's joke was actually, you would find this really funny. You here's an answer to all your solutions. Pay 4,500 for another course in coaching.
Yeah, exactly. No, I've
Oh
seen it.
yeah,
I'm,
let me magically pull out $4,500 like I have it available.
and you'll instantly become a billionaire.
Or let me pull out $4,500 and maybe I'll get that interview. Yeah, not. All right. So this was a fun session today. Thanks for coming out. And I will let you know once it's up on the YouTube channel and then when I
Mhm.
decide to post it, which will hopefully be in the new month. All right.
Awesome. Sounds good.
Awesome. All right. See you soon.
Okay. I'll talk to you soon.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Hold on. No. Where is the. Yes.